Hi, my name is Gabe Chang-Deutsch, and today I will be making a video on effective post-round judge conversations. Why are your conversations with the judge after the RFD important? One frame to remember for these conversations is that the debate round is over. The RFD has no competitive value. You cannot win a post round. It will not change your results, nor will it change how you did within that specific debate. They are much more for educational value than changing the way another debater thought or the way your judge has thought. You should remember that debate judges are adults who decided to spend their weekends coaching students. It is illogical to not respect their contributions given what they have given to the activity. While it may seem like some judges are lazy or uninterested in the debate, that is much, on aggregate, very untrue. And even if it is true that your specific judge was pretty bad, learning how to debate in front of judges that are not putting that much effort into deciding the debate will make you much more competitively successful in the future so that you know how to debate and convince those judges. Secondly, is the debaters are bad at knowing what happens in a debate. After a round, when you're telling your coach or your friends what happened, your emotions and your reading of the flow can be irrational. Debate is, after all, competitive, and we do not want to lose. So I think a lot of times we paint ourselves in the best light. We say our arguments were explained the best they could have ever been explained. While this may make us feel good, it doesn't make you better at debate in the long run. What is nice about the RFD is that judges are spending this time to help you out, explain their decision, explain how they think about debate, which will allow you to have a better understanding of the debate that occurred. Secondly, taking notes on decisions lets you gather intelligence both on your performance and the way specific judges think about debate in a single aggregated space that you can look back to later. Having your notes from RFDs and questions in one document will be extremely helpful as you get older in your career, knowing what to give speeches on to get better, and knowing where to put judges on your prep sheet. It is also important to remember that judges decide debates. You could be the best debater ever, but if judges do not conclude that you won the round, that is the thing that changes on taboo. It is important to understand how judges are deciding the debates, because while debate is competitive, it is also communicative. And if your communication is ineffective, all the preparation you have done will be less effective. Knowing how judges think gives you a leg up on the competition because you can use your evidence and use your arguments to better persuade them. The comments they give you after decisions allows you to change your arguments in response to criticism and find better version of the arguments you are running or jettison those arguments altogether. One thing about judges is that many times they are very nice, but they will give you, a true rendition of what occurred in the debate. So their feedback can be really important in changing your argumentative strategies. Thirdly, debaters who wait after a decision, seem involved in the decision, listening, taking notes, and asking questions, builds a rapport with judges. Judges like voting for people who care about the activity and are engaged. While this is not going to change the results of an entire season, it can make a judge more likely to give you 0.1 speaks higher or vote for you in an extremely close debate, which, when stacked up over 4 or 8 years, can be really important. Questions to ask after you've just won a debate. After winning a round, you should listen to the RFD. I will reiterate this on all of the slides, but you should take notes not only on the questions you ask, but also on the decision the judge renders. What the judge decided on, and what did not matter to them. Lots of times after debates, you think a specific argument will have greatly affected the outcome of debates, and judges truly don't even evaluate it. So understanding what the judge found important in that round will be very important. After you won a debate, it is not everything, and you don't have to think. After winning a debate, it is not everything, and it does not mean that you don't have to listen to what the judge has said. You should ask about the persuasive value of your speech. Lots of times I ask how I could speak to get higher speaks in the future in front of this judge. You should listen for mistakes that you made that the other team would have capitalized on. You should also take notes on the question the other team asks. When the judge is answering the questions the other team asks, they will be pointing out places that you messed up on. They will be implicitly pointing out flaws in your argumentation when they're telling your opponent what they could have argued better or taken advantage of. So when your opponent is asking questions and the judge answers, this is not a time to slack off. You should also ask questions about your performance. Many times, debates are actually much closer than we think, and in RFD, judges don't always point out every problem in the debate. For example, if there is a flow that was not extended into the final rebuttals, judges might not talk about it in the decision. You should ask about these decisions that didn't make it to the final rebuttals or were not the most important. Should you have extended a flow? Were there arguments that you neglected to make that should have been there? Was there an argument that you extended that you should not have extended or even introduced in the first place? These questions will increase the persuasive value of your speeches and mean that in your future debates, you'll both understand how to win, but understand how to make your wins even more decisive, which will make decisions come back shorter, decrease stress, increase speaks, all of which is important. Also, a lot of times when I'm debating, sometimes I think a judge is affectively against an argument based on their reactions, i.e. they're shaking their heads or they look bored when you're making an argument. You should ask about that during decision. You don't have to be like, oh, I didn't know if you like this argument. Do you like this argument? But rather you can be like, how did you evaluate X argument? Should I have extended X argument? Many times looks can be deceiving and the judges actually like that argument or were thinking about something altogether different while flowing. So understanding the way judges had thought about a specific argument that you seem to think they might dislike will be helpful. An example of asking questions after winning a debate that has been helpful for myself is round 6 of the Cal Berkeley tournament this year. I debated a very good team from Bellarmine College Preparatory Academy, and our judge, and I went for a topicality argument, and in that RFD, our judge gave great comments to the affirmative about how they could have made their responses to topicality even better. I took notes on their responses, on what the judge told the AF to do better, and then I wrote my blocks in response to what the judge had told the AF to do better. This allowed me to iterate my blocks and iterate the argument I was making, even when I had already won the debate, which meant that I had a leg up when the other team changed their blocks in response to the judge comments. So what the judge tells the other team to do better, you should think, if the other team had done that better, how should I have changed my performance? Which is another way to take notes and use those notes after winning a round. Questions to ask after you've just lost a round. It is good and okay to lose. I have probably lost hundreds of debates in my life, and it is an inevitable part of the process. You should think of these decisions as the most informative, and judges will many times be eager to help you out because they will see missed opportunities and the potential in your argumentation. Again, you should listen to the RFD, taking notes on what the judge voted on and what arguments you thought mattered that they didn't. Did the other team drop a theory argument that didn't end up matter? Did the other team make an argument that you spent a lot of time on but the judge thought was not going to be that important in the end of the debate? This will help you change your time allocation and your argumentation in the future. Again, you should ask about choice making. Many times you have the tools to make an argument work, but do not capitalize. Judges can see this from a bird's eye view, but you may not, given the limited prep time, spreading, so on and so forth. So ask about what choices you failed to make or made and shouldn't have made, and the judges will many times give an extremely helpful response. You should ask about places in the debate that you didn't understand. Sometimes we lose debates because we don't know what the opponent is saying. Judges will explain that to you. Maybe you weren't sure how an argument worked. Maybe you didn't have the evidence set to answer a specific argument. Judges will tell you what research to do, and you should be ready to be like, I simply didn't understand this. I didn't know how to win this debate. How could I have done it? And judges will be there to give you great feedback. I'll talk on the next slide about when you disagree with the judge's decision and you have lost, but you should always be willing to listen to the judge's comments. Sometimes judges will say things in decision like, oh, this debate was far gone, you made a fair amount of mistakes. They're not saying you are a bad person. These are not personal, but rather a description of your performance within that single debate. And even though it might sound a little disrespectful, they're meant to help you out. Because by pointing out these mistakes, you can change them when doing a redo and just remember these mistakes in the future. So you should view your mistakes in a single debate round, when pointed out, as things that you can easily change and then never make them again or, reduce their incidence. Sometimes you just think, oh, this was the worst decision ever. It was a total judge mistake. That is not a reason to post round and ask unhelpful questions. Tab Room does not care who won the post round, and neither does anyone else. There's no prize for showing the judge they were wrong. But you should remember that mistakes do not happen out of nowhere. They are most likely to occur when you don't impact out arguments and judges don't see the importance of specific arguments. Many times, post rounds go like this. Why didn't you think this argument was super important? Well, you didn't impact it out well enough. Why wasn't this impacting out well enough? As you can see, the judge didn't think that, usually the judge doesn't think that what the debater thought was super important was as important. Knowing how the judge came to the quote-unquote incorrect conclusion matters more than the content in these decisions. Maybe you did not preempt an argument. Maybe you were too fast on an argument. The reason the judge made a decision you disagreed with allows you to rectify that in the future because you can change the form of how you argue so that judges are less likely to do that and you can point out the importance of your arguments. Post rounds happen because of a misalignment of a judge flow reading and debaters. But you should have some humility in your post round questions. You should listen to what the judges are saying and be ready to be wrong. Sometimes you think you won a debate and you are simply incorrect. Judges will point out what was a mistake and then you can be like, oh, this makes sense. How can I rectify it in the future? Post rounding too aggressively is not good. You want to continue to have a relationship with the judge. You might have them in elims of this tournament. You might want to prep them later. Aggressive post rounds where you don't take good notes or listen gets no one anywhere. The judge leaves mad. The other team is in a really awkward position. And you don't know how to resolve that mistake in the future. It is inevitable that some judges will make mistakes. All judges make mistakes. But you should find a way to make your arguments convincing enough that those mistakes play out in your favor. And that is the questions you should ask in a post round. Such as, what way could this argument have been more persuasive? Could have made it seem more important in your decisions? All of that matters. When you post round too aggressively, it creates a bad rep for you in the community. It decreases your rapport with judges and can have odd power dynamics, especially when white men post round non-white men or queer people. An example of a time I disagreed with the decision was round 6 of the Tournament of Champions this year. A judge rendered a decision in a KVK debate that I disagreed with, but I understood how they came to that conclusion, and based on the questions I asked them, I changed my alternative that I read on the capitalism critique for future debates. Even though I disagreed with their decision, I understood how they came to that quote-unquote incorrect decision, and then I did something so that I could make sure other judges didn't do that in the future. Changing my alternative helped me win some more debates. So even though I disagreed with the judge, I was still able to use their feedback in an effective manner. You should ask questions when you are debating in front of panels and elims a little differently. You should listen to the RFDs as a conversation. Many times, the second and the third judges on the panel are highlighting differences in how they decided the debate. These distinctions in what arguments they thought mattered, what they thought each team needed to clean up, are extremely helpful in the future because you can understand the specific differences in the way different judges decide debates. A lot of times we understand judges in a vacuum, or like, this judge is good for topicality, this judge is bad for non-resolutional procedurals. But if you understand the differences in the way those judges evaluate specific arguments in comparison to other judges, it helps you bring them out of a vacuum and think about the specific things that are necessary to get their ballot. It is important to think about how you can standardize decision making. The best debaters can predict how judges will decide. You should ask the judge what you could have done to resolve specific parts of the debate in a more organized manner. Questions in decisions such as how could I have debated better are really unhelpful because there's almost always a lot that we can all do to debate better in specific debates. Questions like, I did not know the correct response to this argument. It seems you voted on this specific argument. How could I have made my responses even better? Are much better because the judge can give you a specific, well-warranted answer, and you can use that answer to change the way you debate in the future. It is better to have specific questions rather than just broad questions, although those broad questions can be helpful in specific instances, such as when you want to debate and the judge does not have any specific feedback for you at the end of that round. Lots of times, elimination rounds with panels are 2-1s. They are usually caused by similar reasons to quote-unquote judge fucks. Even though it might be a 2-1 in your favor, in prelims, one of those judges would have voted against you. Many times, this is because you didn't impact out arguments so that all the judges saw their importance, or your opponent didn't impact out arguments well enough or point out mistakes in your argumentation. This means that on 2-1 panels, you should ask the judges, both who are on top and the judge who is on the bottom, what you could have done to resolve the difference in their decisions. Ask questions such as, so I know you both viewed this questions differently, so I know you both viewed the link to the disadvantage differently. What could I have done to make my argumentation on the link to the DA stronger? How could I have impacted out the link better? How could I have done my link defense more persuasively? That way, the judges who are on two different sides of the decision can give you really helpful comments. These are the best way to adjust your debating. You can see what matters to different judges in comparison to other judges and change that. It is also extremely helpful on the judge information sheet, which I will talk about below, to talk about how different judges relate to other judges in their decisions, so you can place them on a continuum in what you like to see and how you should argue in front of them. Sometimes you should ask for judge feedback after a tournament, especially after round 3 or 4, so the last round of a day, or later in a tournament, so after octafinals. I ask judges to email them after the tournament. Obviously, they are under no obligation to respond to you, but you will find that many times judges are touched by a debater reaching out for feedback and will grant you really good feedback. I'm extremely tired at these times of tournaments, or I might have another round to go to. I will not digest feedback if they just verbally give it to me, so asking in an email form respects their time more because they don't say things that I just totally forget. When sending these emails, you should be respectful. Thank them for their time. It makes a response more likely, and they are spending extra time outside of the tournament proper, which does matter. You should formulate your questions with increased specificity. You have more time to think about these questions, and the judge has more time to respond, so more in-depth feedback is possible. Ask them how a specific mistake you made or a specific thing you noticed in the opponent's argumentation could have been capitalized on much better. This is the best time to level up your argumentation, because the judge in these emails, I like to think of them as blocks. What the judge will send you is almost a block of what they wish you had seen. If you turn that email into an actual block, you can use their feedback extremely effectively. After developing a closer relationship with judges, sometimes they will be willing to listen to a redo or send evidence they think you should have read. Obviously, you should not expect them to listen to your redos. They have lives, but you can ask. You can ask and be open to whatever answer they give. For example, after a debate I had lost, I asked, can any of you listen to this redo? And the judges were like, we can, but we might not get around to it. I sent the redo. No one ended up listening to it, but the process of doing that redo was still helpful, and sometimes judges will listen. You should do what you say you will do. If you say you will email a judge after the tournament, you should email them. If you say you're going to ask them for a piece of evidence that they said they would give you, you should do that. You should not just tell the judge you will do something and then not do it. Decreases your rapport, and it makes you seem a little lazy. So I've said why it's important to take judge notes. The content of the judge notes matters a lot, but the form of that judge notes matters a lot. Matters even as much. You should have a running document organized via judge or tournament. It should include the arguments from the 1AC to the 2AR in that round, the notes on the RFD, and notes on the judge. For example, it could be 1AC, demilitarize the police, 1NC, and then the arguments presented in the 1NC. Sometimes you can take notes on the block, or if the 2AC made a specific strategic move, such as straight turn to DA, impact turn something, and then you should say 2NR went for the court's counterplan and the politics disadvantage. The 2AR went for, and then you can just have a quick note. Like maybe they focused on a deficit and defense of the DA. Maybe they went for conditionality. Maybe the impact on the disadvantage, permutation shields the link argumentation. You should have notes on what the opponent has said. Just quick notes. You should also have notes on the RFD and notes on the judge, which I talked about below. If you organize it via tournament, it lets you see your progression. It lets you see, oh, this is the way different judges have looked at me over 4 or 8 years. That can be extremely helpful to see what you can change and what you have been changing. For example, if judges at the start of the year really wanted you to slow down in the 1AR, and that was not a comment you were receiving by the Glenbrooks tournament, then you know you have resolved that problem. So that is a benefit of organizing it via tournament, and that is what I do. Some people I know organize their judge comment sheet via judge. So it is, for example, let's say I was judging Gabe Chang-Deutsch, and then round 1 Greenhill, round 2 Glenbrooks, round 3 Blake, round 2 again Emory, and then, whether you won or lost that round, 1AC to 2AR, and the notes that I gave from that round. This organizing it via judge is helpful with your prefs because it means that you can see exactly how the judges thought in multiple different ways. I think that organizing via tournament is a little better because you can always just Command F the judge, which makes it easier, which means that you can still use it for your prefs, and the chronological nature of organizing it via tournament helps you see your progress and where you need to move. You should make it part of your post-round routine to open this document. Part of waiting for RFDs should be pulling this up and just being ready to type when the judge starts speaking. Doesn't take that long. It takes maybe 5-10 minutes in each post-round, but the benefits are enormous. You should utilize judge comments when you are doing post-tournament redos and preparation. You should go back to them, see what things they thought you messed up on, see what things they thought you should change, and then do that. Your judge comments are the most important way to see how your preparation turns into what you are actually saying in a debate. So you should use those comments to change the way you prepare before a tournament. If a lot of judges think that your 2-Rs are just not making enough arguments, you should do speed drills. If a lot of judges think you are going for topicality too much, maybe you could practice going for a different argument. Or if you're affirmative and judges think that your 2ARs against the ontology component of the Afro-pessimism critique are not persuasive, you should do a lot of drills on that. So using judge comments from a tournament will help you make your redos better, but it will also help you make your files better because you can see what judges want to see. You can know what judges want to see, what arguments they find persuasive, and turn those into analytics so you don't have to constantly remember it before the round. Utilize your judge comment sheet when you're doing your prefs. Your experience with the judge matters much more than their representation. I think in high school, a lot of your friends will say, oh, this judge is so bad. This judge is so bad for this specific argument. But if you trust a judge in the back and the RFDs that they have given you reflect that, you should be comfortable putting them high. If you know how to debate in front of a judge, they are a good judge for you. And if you have good notes on how that judge decides debates, you will have the skills to be able to debate well in front of them. You should use your judge comment doc in the pre-round. Once the tournament is going, prefs don't matter because you have the judge regardless. So if you messed up your prefs, so be it. But you should use your judge comment doc to find what arguments they find persuasive, what works in front of them, what doesn't, and then you can change your pre-round preparation around that. It will make it more likely you win rounds. In conclusion, you should take good notes on what the judge says, ask good questions of how you could have debated better in the future, and keep those notes and questions organized in a document that you refer to for post-tournament preparation, pre-round preparation, and your judge preference sheet. While this may seem a little tedious and boring, and sometimes simply tiring, the aggregate hour or two you spend on this over a weekend of debate has innumerable rewards and makes your preparation much more targeted and effective. If you see what judges think is the problem, that way you don't have to change everything about your argumentation. You will just be able to change the things that matter for decisions. One thing to remember is that you should target your preparation to what the judges care about. Just like I talked about above, maybe judges don't mention, but there's a lot of problems in your argument. But if they see glaring holes, you can target your preparation and make it more effective. So even though it's more time in the tournament proper that you're spending taking notes, it actually lessens the amount of preparation you have to do after a tournament because you will know what needs to be changed and know what problems you have. You should not trust yourself to remember what a judge has said in a specific RFD or remember exactly how they thought about a round. It's super hard. You'll be super tired after a tournament. So typing it out is the most effective way. To have notes and keep those notes in one specific place. Thank you so much for coming to my video.